Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear friends and colleagues. Welcome to the UNU Generative AI webinar series brought to you by United Nations University. My name is Jingbo Huang. I'm the director of a UNU Institute in Macau, an institute specialized in digital technologies and SDGs. Since last year, 2023, UNU has started a series of generative AI webinar series, including topics such as why generative AI is not sustainable, the development of it, and the legal implication of it. So today's webinar will mark the fifth webinar in the series. Particularly, we would like to feature the UNESCO Guidance for Generative AI in Education and Research. We are particularly honored to be joined by Professor Marwala, UNU Rector, and Ms. Giannini, the UNESCO Assistant Director General for Education. Now, I would like to give the floor to our UNESCO colleague, Sobi Towil, Director of Future of Learning and Innovation, to introduce the opening remarks. The floor is yours, Sobi.
Thank you very much, Jingbo Wang, and welcome to everyone. Very pleased to be co-organizing this specific seminar on generative AI in education within the UN University series on generative AI. I am the Director of Future of Learning and Innovation at UNESCO. That covers areas of work around the futures of education, around technology and AI in education. It also includes work leveraging our international network of university chairs, UNESCO chairs that work in all areas of UNESCO mandate, from culture and development to gender issues, to the science and technology, to the right to education, and to AI and education. So we have a very exciting panel ahead, but before, and the panel will be moderated by Jingbo Wang from the UN University Institute in Macau. But before turning over to the panel, first some opening remarks, and we are delighted to have Professor Chilidzi Marwala, Rector of the UN University, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, together with my boss, the Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO, Ms. Stefania Giannini, both who will be giving opening remarks. Rector Marwala, over to you, and great to have you with us.
No, thank you very much, colleagues, for inviting me. And firstly, I would like to also acknowledge the presence of my colleague, Ms. Stefania Giannini, who is also our council member at the United Nations University. I am quite excited and would like to welcome you to our UNESCO-UNU webinar on generative AI and education. It is truly exciting to have such a diverse group of bright minds from all over the world joining us today. We are here to focus on the role of generative AI in education, a topic which is not just about technology, but about the future of learning itself. Over the course of my career as an AI engineer, I have witnessed several digital revolutions, from the rise of personal computers and the explosion of the internet to the influence of social media and mobile connectivity. Each of these changes has dramatically reshaped our lives, including the ways we teach and learn. Today, we find ourselves, and especially our youth, spending more time in digital realms than ever before, a scenario that would have seemed like science fiction just a generation ago. The sudden emergence of generative AI has brought us to the brink of another digital revolution. It promises personalized learning experiences, making education more engaging and accessible, even in the most remote areas. For educators, it offers a helping hand with administrative tasks and the creation of engaging learning materials. However, as with the earlier digital shifts, the use of AI comes with complexities. There are many issues which need to be navigated carefully and intentionally, such as biases within AI, the digital divide, and the protection of student data. Furthermore, as we integrate AI into education, we are prompted to reflect deeply on what it means to be human in an increasingly digital world. Generative AI, especially applications that produce human-like text, challenges our understanding of human intelligence and the essence of human connections. It brings to the forefront questions about the autonomy of technology and its potential to transcend the boundaries we set. The potential of generative AI in education is an area worthy of cautious exploration. Consider the possibility of a classroom where AI could adapt learning materials to suit individual students' unique styles and paces. Such a scenario may not be far-fetched. It is a direction we may be heading in. Generative AI has the potential to address significant barriers in education. Imagine the prospect of high-quality educational resources being distributed to even the most remote regions, potentially empowering learners worldwide. Additionally, AI could offer tailored support to students with special needs, potentially fostering a more inclusive environment. Teachers could benefit significantly from the capabilities of generative AI. It may assist in automating administrative tasks, freeing up valuable time for educators to focus on the needs of their students. Collaboration between teachers and AI may also lead to innovative approaches to lesson planning, potentially enhancing the overall educational experiences. Yet, as we navigate the potential of generative AI in education, it is crucial to acknowledge and address the associated risks and challenges. Firstly, the reliability and biases inherent in AI models are significant concerns. We have seen the generative AI trained on vast data sets is at risk of inadvertently perpetuating harmful biases, leading to the creation of culturally insensitive or biased generated content. Such content could undermine the inclusivity and accuracy of educational materials, potentially reinforcing harmful stereotypes. There is also a risk that students could become overly reliant on generative AI for assessments, hindering the development of critical thinking and problem solving. The inherent inaccuracies in generated content may also contribute to this challenge, as students could struggle to discern between reliable information and hallucinatory data. Ultimately, the digital divide poses a significant risk where students and schools with limited access to advanced technology or reliable internet connectivity may face disadvantages. According to the recent UNICEF and ITU report, 2/3 of the world's school-age children aged 3 to 17 years old do not have internet connection in their homes. This could exacerbate existing inequalities, incompetencies, levels, and opportunities, widening the gap between privileged and underprivileged learners. In light of these challenges and risks, it is imperative that we approach the integration of generative AI in education with caution, prioritizing ethical consideration and implementing robust safeguards to mitigate potential harm. As an academic, I have always believed that writing effectively is a key skill for fostering and showcasing analytical and critical thinking abilities. However, the emergence of generative AI challenges these beliefs, prompting me to reconsider the importance of learning how to write clearly and effectively. In a rapidly evolving world where generative AI systems continuously develop new capabilities, what skills, perspectives, and competencies should our education systems prioritize? What adjustments are necessary in both schools and society to prepare students for the future where human and machine intelligence are increasingly intertwined, each supporting and influencing the other? As we seek to promote a more equal global society with a focus on the betterment of all peoples, it is essential that we ensure that there is inclusive and equitable access to AI in education. While there are various ways in which this can be accomplished, there is no one-fits-all approach. Different frameworks, technical standards, and policy interventions must be used for different contexts, domains, and applications of generative AI. By doing so, we can chart a comprehensive approach which benefits all. At the regional level, cross-border coordination and dialogue is essential to establishing common standards that guide the responsible integration of AI into education. As we develop these common standards, it is also important to recall that we are not starting from scratch. The groundwork for ensuring equitable AI education has already been laid by existing education policies, instruments, and standards, and we must ensure that new initiatives and efforts are in alignment with this. UNESCO continues to play a pivotal role in the global regulation of AI in education, as it works with countries around the world to develop strategies, plans, and regulations to ensure the safe and beneficial use of AI in education. UNESCO has also coordinated the adoption of several significant instruments and standards, such as the 2019 Beijing Consensus on Artificial Intelligence and Education, as well as its recommendation on the ethics of AI and education guidance for policymakers in 2021. Last year, UNESCO organized the first global meeting of ministers of education to share knowledge about the impact of generative AI tools on teaching and learning. These initiatives have brought together national governments, academia, civil society, and private sector partners to establish a comprehensive path towards equitable AI education. To take advantage of these significant steps, it is vital that they are supported and implemented at a national level. For instance, it will be vital that governments incentivize the development of localized education specialized generative AI to ensure equitable outcomes in all countries and all regions. United Nations University is also playing an important role in developing global governance standards for AI. We have argued for the establishment of a global commission on just and sustainable digitization, which will be the multi-stakeholder forum responsible for agenda setting and coordination of global digital governance, with a role going beyond AI to include all data, the internet, and digital innovations. Many of our long-standing beliefs about learning and knowledge may not hold up against the potential of AI. Simply preparing for an AI-driven future is not enough. We need to dig deeper. What kind of a world do we want with AI in the picture? What role should it play, and who should decide? These questions are crucial for steering the course of our educational and societal journey. They prompt us to consider our values and the principles guiding our interaction with AI. The decisions we make now will shape the world tomorrow. In closing, as we explore the vast potential and navigate the challenges of generative AI in education, let us keep the conversation open and inclusive. We stand at a crossroads with the power to shape how generative AI will transform education. By working together, we can ensure that this technology not only advances our capabilities, but also honors our shared humanity. As Kofi Annan, the 7th Secretary General of the UN, said, education is the premise of progress in every society, in every family. Thank you for being here today. I am looking forward to the rich discussions and innovative ideas that will emerge as we journey through this very important topic together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rector Marwala, for very rich opening remarks. You've really set the context in a very comprehensive way, touching upon the multiple dimensions and issues. So really, thank you very much for that. And again, UNESCO, at UNESCO Education, we're very pleased to be joining you on this series on generative AI focused on education. And now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO. Stefania, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sobi. Dear colleagues, dear Rector Marwala, and dear participants, good morning, greetings from Paris, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure really to see you all here today. It's a great pleasure to see you, particularly you, dear Tsibilzi, and to see you again after our lovely, interesting conversation we had last December in Tokyo on education for sustainable development. In that occasion, I was very much focusing on one of the main challenges and let's say topic that education must address in current times: climate change, the role of education to actually effectively address the green transition. And I think that the discussion we are having today is a kind of complementary to that one, as we are, putting education at the core of the digital transition, which is another important, crucial dimension that governments and society at large have to go through effectively for the best. And in particular, the AI revolution and the generative AI, the last generation of AI, can really have an impact, a huge impact on education, as you greatly put in a very comprehensive way in your introductory remarks. From my side, I wish to simply complement from the UNESCO perspective and remind all of you about the big questions we have to address, we have in front of us, and how universities in particular, education systems broadly speaking, but in particular universities are relying more and more on AI, the more to help make decisions about, for instance, university applications, as well as identifying who may have cheated on examination or plagiarized. I mean, the more this is the trend, and the more we have to clarify, identify the right questions in order to provide as much as possible a few answers. And UNESCO is reflecting deeply since now at least 4 or 5 years on the many applications that AI presents for the future of knowledge, for the future of education and learning. How will AI change the teaching profession? That's one of the main questions we have to address. Do we see generative AI replacing the role of teachers in transmitting knowledge and providing information and data to be translated in knowledge to children and learners? How should we assess learning now that AI can ace most standardized tests and draft complex essays with just a few clicks, just a simple question to be provided to the machine learning? Are students becoming too reliant on AI? And this is the way to go. This is the trend we have to encourage. If yes, which kind of skills and which kind of competencies are now most relevant in this new AI world. Will we need to learn, for instance, second and third languages in the future, or it would be simply and crucially important to manage the machine learning and the translators that can provide a full immersion in a multilingual context. But to know, of course, we know that learning a second and third language is not simply a question of communication. It's crucially a question of knowing and, let's say, traveling in another culture, in another vision of the world. So this is the complex context that we are within. And the big question, which summarizes everything, what will education look like next year, in 5 years, in a generation from now? That was the title I proposed in a kind of conversation I had here in Paris with the Oxford Society of Alumni. Are we Generation AI, whatever we like or we don't? Is this the contest? If yes, we have to find for the right principles and guidelines. And in the face of many unanswered questions and great uncertainty, UNESCO is helping to guide the way. That's our role, that's our mandate. And about a year ago, we organized the very first ministerial roundtable on generative AI in education, when some 40 ministers of education called for more direction on the integration of AI in education. And to meet this, we developed the first ever guidance on generative AI in education, which proposes key actions for governmental agencies to regulate the use of generative AI to ensure their safety and appropriateness for teaching and learning. These actions include, among the others, the following three main action lines: mandating the protection of data privacy, especially for children; updating copyright laws for an age of AI; and defining age limits for the use of generative AI. Our guidelines argue that GenAI tools, which are largely untested and under-researched, are ill-suited for primary levels of education. Young children have special protections in the analog world, and they need to say the same in online and digital worlds. And this is not to be taken for granted, because we know that, at least so far, these regulatory frameworks are not yet in place. In addition to guidance for policymakers and regulators, UNESCO is also developing the AI competency framework for students and teachers, which will be released in September this year, where we are organizing an important event, which is the conference, the yearly conference, second of this new cycle that we call the Digital Learning Week, where all these multi-stakeholder platform that we established now 5 years ago is kindly invited to gather in Paris in order to share all the new visions and practices, but also to address these questions I put on the table today, and many others that I'm sure you are in your daily work addressing. My colleague Fengchun Miao will go into more detail about this part of the work, but in closing, I wish really to thank all of you for your participation in this UNU UNESCO webinar, and with my colleagues really looking forward for the insightful conversations and collaborations that I'm sure will emerge from today's conversation and webinar, and is going to enrich this important platform that UNESCO established a few years ago. Thank you so much, Sobi. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Stefania. Thanks for recalling really the fundamental questions that this latest phase of technological innovation with generative AI systems are posing to the future of knowledge, to the future of learning, and thanks for recalling and outlining the efforts that UNESCO has been making in the area of AI in education already since 2019. Has had the foresight to be looking at this very fast-paced changes that are confronting the education system. And I think one key point that you brought up is the question of age. Much of the discussion on generative AI in education is age blind, and there are key differences in considerations for conversations around generative AI in education, whether we are talking about primary level, secondary, or as you said, higher education and universities. So thank you very much for that, Stefania. Thank you both, Rector Marwala and ADG Stefania, for these opening remarks. I think you've really set the stage for the panel to come. And with this, I give the floor back to Jingbo Wang, who will be moderating the next segment. Wang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sobi. Okay, I'm looking at the list of participants and also the discussion. Is really interesting to see because at a certain point we reach 170 participants, and I calculated from the self-introduction we covered 30 countries. Is really amazing. Okay, so thank you for the opening remarks from our two senior managers. Now let's hear more about this guidance for generative AI in education and research. So first of all, I would like to invite the main driver, the writer behind this guidance work, Mr. Miao Fengchun, Chief of a Unit for Technology and AI in Education, Future of Learning and Innovation UNESCO, to present the work to us. Mr. Miao, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, especially Rector Marwala and ADG Stefania, also Sobi and Jingbo for your introduction. I have the honor to follow up on their remarks by introducing UNESCO Guidance for Generative AI in Education and Research. As highlighted by ADG and Sobi, we are promoting a human-centered approach to the design and the use of AI in education. So I try to summarize some keywords about what we mean by the human-centered approach. The human-centered approach, we have a cornerstone, is the humanistic principle that was specified in 1948 in the Declaration for Universal Human Rights. Based on that, actually, we are promoting that the design and the use of AI should serve the purpose of human capacity development, and we should protect human rights and human agency, and make the AI explainable, predictable, and the design, especially the use of AI, should be human controlled and human accountable. And in the process of using AI in education, we should ensure that we're protecting cultural and linguistic diversity, and we are encouraging the plural opinion construction, and also the plural knowledge construction, but also the plural expression of our opinion. So that's the guiding principle behind our guidance. So just follow up to what Sobi introduced and ADG introduced UNESCO's work, and we can summarize UNESCO's work on AI and education in this slide. So first of all, we have some focus areas. Since UNESCO has the foundation to support countries and especially to build the national capacity in different areas of education. So we are focusing AI and education policy, For this, in 2019, we developed and released the Beijing Consensus on AI and Education. And based on that, we developed the guidance for policymakers on AI and education. And we translated into all the UN language, also including Korean language. And we have organizing seminars and trainings for policymakers based on different languages. For example, we're going to organize a seminar based on Arabic language, French language, Spanish language. Our seminar have covered more than 50 countries, more than 2,000 policymakers. And we have been watching the trends of AI and their implications for education. Based on UNESCO's recommendation on the ethics of AI, we are also distributing surveys, investigations to our member states to, at that time, 193 countries. And we conducted at least 2 large-scale surveys. And in view of the trends, we produced the generative AI guidance last year. At the same time, as I said, we are developing AI competency framework for school students and also for school teachers. They will be released in the Digital Learning Week 2024. And over years, especially starting from 2019, we have been organizing annual international forum and a conference on AI and education. We organized this for 4 years in a row. And last year, we did not organize this forum, but we, as the ADG said, we organized the Ministry Roundtable on Generative AI Education, gathering ministers from more than 45 countries. And we launched the Digital Learning Week in 2023. This year, we will go on to organize the 2nd edition of Digital Learning Week, as I said, in September. At the same time, we are organizing 5 regional seminars on AI competencies for teachers and for students that will cover more than 130 countries. At the same time, we are also preparing a report. We call it AI and the Futures for Learning. So there's another work in parallel. Based on this,
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Miao. The slides are not moving.
Okay, can you see now?
No.
It's not moving?
It's still the first slides with your title slide.
Oh, sorry. I may need to top share again. I hope it's now okay.
No, there's no sharing.
Can you see now?
Yeah, we can see slide 3.
Okay, so now it's move or not?
Slide 3, can you please try to move?
It's now moving or not?
Right now we see the presentation mode. So this is what we see as main publications on AI education.
Okay, just a moment. Can you see it now? No?
Yes, now we see generative AI in education policy context.
Okay, I will start from here. I think I introduced this slide. Can you see this slide?
Yes, UNESCO work on AI education.
Yeah, that's our main work on AI and education. We have 4 focus areas, and then we have been organizing a forum over years. And then we have this publication. We have 5 publications, including the Beijing Consensus, guidance for AI and education guidance for policymakers, both English and the Spanish versions. And we also have the K-12 AI curriculum. And last year, we released the guidance for generative AI in education and research. All these 5 publications are among the top 50 most consultant publication of UNESCO. And based on this, I would like to move to the content. We believe that if we want to make a trustable and effective use of AI education, we need to produce an enabling policy context. First of all, we need to regulate ethics of AI. Secondly, we need to consider to prioritize the use of AI for inclusion and equity in education. And thirdly, and also most importantly, we need to build the AI competency for teachers and students. And then we explore how AI can be used in teaching and learning. Based on this, the key message of the UNESCO's guidance for generative AI in education. So first of all, in addition to the guidance, I would like to propose a kind of a methodology for us to examine the AI in education. We need to, I propose a human-machine collaboration model, which means we need to unpack what do we mean by human. It covers the individual level, human interaction level, including the social emotional development of students, but also we need to consider the sovereign states, the implications of the government and the regulations, but also our relations with the environment and ecosystem. From AI, we need to unpack the key technology step of the life cycle of AI, including the production and of data, access to data, and the control of data. But most importantly, how data and algorithm models, architectures are being built to make decisions, to make a prediction, and to generate output, including ChatGPT and generative AI. But most importantly, also, we need to think of what kind of interface we are facing. And with this, we can unpack, for example, ChatGPT-3. What's the data source? What's the language distribution? Whether the model is explainable or not, and whether generative AI understands the semantics of language and the real world. And we need to think from education, what are the fundamental values and the fundamental practice we are promoting from the evolution of knowledge, production of knowledge, and the social value development, the job skills, and the general competency. With this, we will be a little bit clearer about generative AI. In addition to the definition we proposed in the guidance, I would like to further simplify the definition and the thinking of AI, because I saw in the chat board that some people think it's more like, in the beginning of, we invented the calculators. Now we are facing generative AI. I want to say that no, it's wrong. It's completely different, because generative AI is a very, very different technology from calculator, because calculator is a passive technology. If we don't use it, it will not use you. AI is the opposite. Even you are not using AI, once you have a face, you are being recognized. Your data are being collected. You have been used by AI, even you don't have any AI devices. So it's very, very different. So we need to think, the AI to me, especially generative AI, is AI inside of our human thinking process. It's a transformer. It's a supercharger of literature review. And it's a disseminator of our performance. Once you input something, the generative AI, especially the skills that can be computed, the generative AI can immediately detect and provide immediate feedback. But it's blind to value and the real world. So we need to protect human agency and motivation, because generative AI will not generate motivation if the student do not want to learn, do not want to think. And we need to ensure human accountable knowledge discovery and our human interaction. Technology will not accountable for our human interaction. And we need to have a human protected linguistic and cultural diversity. And it's a new threat for the security of digital learning infrastructure, and it's generated greater harms for our environment. With this, we summarize in this guidance 8 very fundamental controversies around generative AI. To me, I think so far it's still the most comprehensive summary of the controversies around generative AI. And first, we think that the generative AI is worsening the digital poverty, and most importantly, the data poverty. And I analyze a kind of taxonomy for reducing AI divide and also digital poverty, data poverty. And then, in general, all the government need to seriously examine what's the life cycle of using data to boost productivity. If we recognize the data is the new productive element, we need to define the new laws, new regulations to govern the entire life cycle of the data-based productivity. Second, the rapid iteration of AI and generative AI is outpacing, I call it domestic regulation adaptation. As said by ADG, there's a kind of a tiered regulation we need to consider, but we can see there's a deficiency of the regulations from general data protection law, only 2/3 of the world, national strategy on AI, only 70 countries, the governance of ethics of AI, around 20 countries, and so far only 3 economies, EU, US, China, have developed the regulations for generative AI. There's a big gap. And the third, the generative AI is using content without consent. We already know the huge lawsuits, filed by New York Times, and then OpenAI counter sue the New York Times. It's all about how we should define the content, how we should use the content with the consent. Fourth, the generative AI's model is unexplainable, which means we are using unexplainable AI model to generative outputs. And most importantly, they are not making their model transparent for the independent researchers and for the regulation agencies. Fifth, AI generated content is polluting the internet. Before the first generation of generative AI was released, that all the generative AI was using the human generated data to train their model. Now they are using AI generated data, including AI generated content to train their model. That's a huge problem. But of course, there's a lot of information with hallucination that are distributed in the internet, is polluting our internet. Sixth, there's the generative AI's lack of understanding of the real world. It does not understand our value. It does not understand our real world. It cannot support the logic framing of the solution to the real world challenge. And seventh, it's threatening the plural knowledge construction. We have plenty of evidence to support this argument. Fifth, the generative AI is generating, I call it a deep fake. Now, if you have somebody's clear picture, you can use around 25 minutes to generate a 60-second deep fake pornographic video with zero cost and zero prerequisite skills. So that's a huge problem, which means generative AI has not proven that it will significantly improve the quality of education, but it has been doing harm to our human strategy. And first of all, as said, we need to regulate generative AI education, including the risk categorization of AI. Secondly, everybody, all the duty bearers need to define and take their accountability. And the third, the public governance institution, government need to validate AI for education to ensure ethics, linguistic and cultural relevance, culture and age appropriateness. And then we need to promote teacher and student agency, and especially to encourage human motivation and intellectual development. We are developing this AI competency framework. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah, so we are developing 2 AI competency framework for teachers. It's not something new. We started this work 3 years ago. We have mobilized quite a lot of experts, and we also present the draft for competition in multiple conferences. For teachers, we are proposing 5 aspects, 3 progression levels. The 5 aspects include human-centered mindset, the ethics of AI for teachers, AI foundation and application for teachers, AI pedagogy for teachers, and AI for professional development for teachers. 3 progression, including acquisition, deepening, and creation. We try to build these competency blocks, and then we will have very much further specifications about what we mean by this. And we are defining this, we are finalizing this AI competency framework for teachers. And at the same time, we also have AI competency framework for students that covered 4 competency aspects and 3 progression levels as well. For students, we are also talking about the human-centered mindset, ethics of AI, but we are more talking about AI techniques and applications for students, because we believe that many countries will start to set up AI as a subject to teach students. So it should go deeper. And even we are covering AI system design. And for students, we hope that students will go through the understanding, applying, and creating process. And as I said, we are organizing the Digital Learning Week in September. We will launch these two competency frameworks. And at the same time, in the guidance, we also propose that we should guide the instructional design on the use of AI. I call it the human, agentic, and pedagogically proper interaction, which means we need to think of what kind of knowledge we are teaching, what are the learning outcomes, what are the social emotional outcomes, and what's the domains of the knowledge, and what's the appropriate methodology, what are the appropriate technology, and what's the appropriate pedagogy, and what's the age appropriate pedagogy and the teaching and the learning activity. And then we decided whether we will use AI or not and how we should use them. And then that's now we need to really do a trade-off about whether we should use generative AI, when to use, and what generative AI to use, for what purpose, and through what kind of pedagogical methodology, and through what kind of human interaction. So we need to really have a trade-off and a test of use models. And with this, we have some emerging example. For example, use the localized LGBT for digital textbook. I think the leading example is Republic of Korea. And also there's an example of using generative AI as a transformer for curriculum co-design. There's an example from Australia and also from the UK, Oak National Academy. And at the same time, there's also quite a lot of example to use generative AI as a discriminator to detect humans' computed skills like coding skill and a very basic math skill. For example, in Harvard, they are using AI to coach only the practice of the coding. And many people are using generative AI, the supercharger of the literature review, to promote the high order thinking and the inquiry-based learning. So based on this, as I said, we also need to consider the safety and the value projection of generative AI, and then to set up age limitation for the independent composition with generative AI platform without adults, teacher, and parents supervision. And then we need to think what this pre-cooked content means for learning. If we have the content hallucination, will it lead to the knowledge illusion? And we already found evidence that the use of generative AI or over-reliance on generative AI will reduce intellectual development and will maybe cost the intelligence enfeeblement. And then it's inappropriate for the high-stake task in education, such as coaching learning and coaching the social processes. And before I conclude, we need to really ask even longer-term question, which means the long-term implication of generative for AI. I think we need to think from the post-AI age. Just as now we are at the post-industrialization age, we are much clearer about what industrialization brought to us, including what are the negativity the industrialization brought to our human society. We need to think from a little bit longer. What will be the post-AI era? And what will be the post-AI digital humanity and learning? And will we be coexisting with the human by design, because people experts believe that AI is becoming a human by design? And what does it mean for us, for humans, to define humanity and to define our learning? So with this, I conclude my presentation. I'm sorry for the problem in the beginning about the PowerPoint. Thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Miao. If you can please stop sharing. Okay, very good. Thank you for the insightful presentation. We run a little bit over time, actually 15 minutes, so I will probably adjust some of the panel discussion questions. Okay, so the next part, if you follow the agenda, it will be the panel discussion. And I'm very delighted to share with you the profiles of our panelists. And we heard about the guidelines, and actually we can add some meat to the bones, to the structure. We can hear the insight from the different experts from different angles. So we have 4 panelists. Let me just first introduce them, and in the next half an hour or so, we'll hear from them about their comments, and then we can have interactions with our audiences if there's time. So first, let me introduce our panelists. So the first panelist is Lydia Krai. Lydia is an international analyst and expert in data and AI in education, a member of the European Commission's working groups on AI and data in education and training, digital education, and safer internet. She had been working at the Ministry of Science and Education in Croatia. She was also a lecturer in mathematics and computer science with 30 years of experience. Welcome, Lydia. The second panelist. Thank you. The second panelist is Mr. Mark Ray, and he's the director of Department of Education Services in Cayman Islands. Mark started his education career from close to 30 years ago, where he was a math and computer science teacher in his homeland, Barbados. Then he transitioned to the educational administrator's role in the Ministry of Education of Barbados, where he led a national education reform initiative. In 2007, he moved to Cayman Islands, responsible for ICT integration, and became the director of education services a couple of years ago. Welcome, Mark. You're on mute.
Thank you.
Sure. Together with Mark, let's welcome Mr. Stephen Tabois. He is the STEM specialist from the Department of Education Services in Cayman Islands. Stephen has been a science teacher, key stage leader, and head of physics and marine science, now STEM specialist, responsible for science and computing policies and curriculum development support. He played a pivotal role in ensuring access to technology and platforms during COVID time, developing some of the largest public-private partnerships in the country. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Dr. Antonio Saravanos. Dr. Antonio Saravanos is a clinical associate professor of information systems at New York University, where he leads the information systems management, applied data analytics and visualization, and marketing analytics majors within the School of Professional Studies. His research centers on technology adoption, particularly focusing on the warm glow phenomenon. Okay, so you can see that we have a lot in common among the panelists. All of them are educators, all of them are teachers, and many of them have been science and math, computer science teachers. We also have something which are different from each other. For example, we have people coming from the policy angle, from the practical implementation angle, from the research higher education angle. So that makes the panel very rich. Okay, so I would like to ask a couple of questions, a few questions to the panelists. The first question will go to Mark and Stephen. You are running the education department in Cayman Islands. What have you been observing happening in schools since generative AI enters our lives in the past couple of years? Mark and Stephen.
Sure, I'll start off, and Stephen will chip in along the way. One of the interesting things for the Cayman Islands is that we're a small island nation. So, initially there was some lag between student uptake and awareness, some of the preparedness and leveraging of the tools really in an educational setting. But educators came on board and very early recognized the challenges with students generating written content, as I think is common across the world. A number of people would have picked up on this quite early. And some of the opportunities as well to support teaching and learning with the generative AI tools. So generally in Cayman, I would say there was a noticeable societal impact where there was the initial excitement and the utilization of tools for development. And then there was more of a realization around some of the wider spread implications due to the speed of development and the proliferation of the use of the tools, and recognizing that there needed to be a bit more structure, some more frameworks, some more safeguards around it. So we had an experience that I believe would have been very similar across the world to a number of other people. I'll ask Stephen to chip in and add some additional content here.
Yes, thanks, Mark. And I remember that kind of initial wave, and having gone to a conference in Australia a few years back, and seeing some of the impacts and how the likes of ChatGPT were being used and utilized, kind of set me thinking. And I came back and I asked one of our I won't say what their name is, but a large multinational vendor that looks at anti-plagiarism, and I asked them. I said, "So what have you got to combat this? Where are you with that?" And they said, "Well, we've got something in beta, but it's kind of very much in its testing phase at the moment." And that was about 18 months ago. So it was really interesting to see that, you know, not only from us, from a small island nation basis, that there was lag, but also from multinationals and large vendors such as them. So that was very interesting to see, and obviously now they're very quickly caught up, but that was an interesting insight. And what we're starting to see now is we see some great pockets of it being utilized and leveraged, where we have some of our educators leveraging content creation, whether it be specifically for a whole lesson or lesson specific resources, you know, which is a great step for, I think, for us and for educators, but has to be taken with the things that are pointed out from the guidance about how that information is actually divulged. So how much information, and when we make those particular lessons personalized to our students, how much information is divulged to systems that don't forget, as we've previously mentioned, and making sure that there's not class or student specific identifying information that's being used in those lesson creations, as it could be a breach of many different laws, including our own. You know, and another quick one to add is also that we also, during this summer, we started a summer program for intervention of the students with greatest need, and we introduced an AI-based math tutoring platform, a one-to-one tutoring platform, and it's had exceptional progress for some of our students. Some of our students have made up to 10 months of progress utilizing that platform, which is a fantastic result. But much as the same as anything within the technology field and wider, is that it's all based upon that stakeholder engagement. We have students that are very well engaged, and teachers and parents that are very well engaged, and therefore, as a result of that, by and large, they see that large improvement and that large support. Those that don't and don't know how to utilize it and haven't been utilizing it, obviously we don't see that with them. So that's one of the things that we really need to take into consideration for the future.
Thank you, Mark and Stephen. Just a follow-up question on what are some opportunities and challenges that generative AI tools bring to teaching and learning in Cayman?
Sure. So I think one of the interesting things for me, being an IT teacher from back in the 90s, I remember, you know, some of the introduction pieces we had around the internet and a number of tools that would have been search and research related, and talking through the opportunities for ethical considerations when you're utilizing these tools, when you talk about triangulating information, verifying sources. And I think an excellent point was made by Mr. Miao, where he said, you know, and I don't think the person who made the comment was drawing a parallel to calculators, but certainly some of the opportunities that we had to introduce some of the ethical use training and opportunities to have young people really have critical thinking skills when they're utilizing these tools. That's an opportunity that I think generative AI brings. And now how we do that certainly is not in the same way that we would have done it with the previous technologies because of the rate of advancement of generative AI. And we have to have the frameworks around it. But I don't think we should miss the opportunity to say that there's a space to help our young people to understand very clearly the ethical use, the idea of critical thinking, the idea of utilizing critical thought to even prompt the right questions. I think that presents a useful opportunity.
Thank you. That's where the guidance for generative AI in education research comes in, right?
Yes.
So the next question goes to Professor Antonio Saravanos. You're a professor at NYU, also an educational technology researcher. As a researcher, how do you use generative AI in your own research work? What are some of your observations of how your students use generative AI tools?
I should begin by noting that this semester I noticed that all my students have some AI solution. Most popular is ChatGPT, and that they're all using it. So I think that's a very very interesting development. For myself, I use it in AI. I use AI in my research as a starting point. So to generate ideas, generate a data set, generate some code, and then later on to review, get feedback, and so on as a peer. That being said, at the moment, right, its abilities are limited, and I believe Mr. Miao put it perfectly when he talked about hallucinations. A lot of the material that's generated is inaccurate, and then you have the concern that some of it may be duplicative. So in academia, we take plagiarism very seriously. So if I were to use what was generated by the AI verbatim, perhaps I'm plagiarizing without even knowing it. So it's a nice productivity tool, but has to be used with a grain of salt, right, with a bit of care. My students, I find they use it in two ways. One is to help them learn. So if the instructor isn't there, the support's not there immediately, they have access to the AI. And also I see them perhaps generating sample solutions, to put it nicely, that they can kind of use to test themselves and see if they're heading in the right direction and so on. Again, the hallucinations are a big problem for them because they don't have the ability, like myself, to discern when they've made a mistake, when the AI has made a mistake. So they see something and they take it to be true, and that's very dangerous because they can go on the wrong path and without even realizing it. So I would say those are the two main ways.
Thank you, Antonio. Yeah, okay, let's move on to Lydia. You're an expert in the ethics of data and AI for education and training. What do you think are the implications of generative AI on the teacher's training?
Lucky for me, I could build upon Mr. Miao presentation of the framework of the teacher competencies and some of the examples our participants already mentioned in the chat. So the big difference between typical ICT training before and nowadays training needed for the use of different AI tools is to put focus on ethical aspects, on human agency, on the fairness, because AI tools are bringing strong disruption, and focusing only on the tools, only on the technical aspects is no longer enough. It's no longer enough to know how to use some tools, but we as teachers should raise competencies of our students to make them being able to critically engage with the AI, understand the implications, but also personal agency in the decision making, and also be aware of those perpetuate biases which are popping up in almost all AI tools. So in previous training, when we think about ICT, there was no mention about the ethics. It was presumed. We thought professional dignity of teachers is self-understanding. So with AI, do that quite carefully. Also, what Mr. Miao mentioned, Mark and Stephen and Antonia as well, artificial intelligence brings some useful insights in personalized learning experience, but emotional and social competencies are relying on a teacher's interaction with the student. So AI could streamline some administrative tasks. It could streamline also personalized learning, but please have in mind that human educators contribute irreplaceable expertise there and can't be replaced by the AI. So having in mind teacher training, make a balance with promotion of the AI tools, ethical aspects, and not just grain of salt, as Antonia said. I think we need such maybe a kilo or a ton of salt with that training and the use.
Thank you. We need an ocean of salt to reconsider this issue. Yeah, thank you for sharing your observations. Since many of you have already referred to the presentation and UNESCO's guidelines, so I will skip the next question for the panelists, and then I will move on to the next question, the second round actually for Mark and Stephen. And as educational policymakers, now we would like to bring your we would like you to wear your policymakers hat. What are your considerations and concerns related to generative AI?
I think it's clear when we look at our context, and certainly when we listen to everyone and see the comments on the chat, that there's more work, more collaboration that needs to be done with regard to policy making in education and beyond. One of the interesting things, we had a senior leadership event here in the Cayman Islands with the civil service, and the focus was on AI, and there was some discussion around governmental wide sort of policies and utilization of AI and generative AI in particular. So it's clear that there's a focus on this particular thing that's happening, and our government is taking interest in it. But the policy around the monitoring, evaluation, and utilization of these AI tools, I think, is essential. For a small nation like ours, sometimes we may not have the capacity to develop, but certainly we have a lot of help. There's a lot of stuff out there, UNESCO, a lot of other international agencies who have put work into doing these types of things that we can build on. The frameworks and the guidance definitely go a long way, but considerations for us would be things like manpower and resourcing, because I always say the devil is in the details when it comes to the implementation of policy. Operational realities shouldn't dictate, but certainly should help to guide the development of policy. And we don't want to set ourselves up for failure. Neither do we want to find ourselves wanting. So I think as a small nation, our manpower or resourcing for implementation is paramount, but certainly a lot more work around policy development. Stephen?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, we've seen this already in terms of what happened previously with essentially a digital divide with devices and the access to the internet and to data during COVID, and we saw that highlighted incredibly quickly. And now we're seeing that kind of second wave where teachers and educators and students and their parents and everybody else are being exposed to it, but trying to meet those needs quickly and to develop those policies quickly enough and that are agile enough, I think is really key for us and for everybody, in fact, because it does change so quickly. And you know, like Mark said, we are starting to become more and more aware of this. Interestingly enough, that only not that long ago we had the questionnaire that came out from UNESCO, and I was asking around various government agencies, and there was a kind of a little bit of an uptake. Obviously now we've got much more of an uptake and interest in it, and really what Lydia was saying about the need for our teachers and our educators to be upskilled, from a local, from a regional, from an international perspective, and how do we how do we do that for ourselves as a small island nation? Yes, we have some limited capacities, but how do we do that in terms of our talent acquisition? Is there enough talent out there for us to acquire that for ourselves and for our wider community, for that local and regional part to happen, or are we going to have to rely upon international and then build that up over time? So that's quite a considerable thing that we need to think about. And we have a relatively, for a small island nation, a thriving tech industry who are often chomping at the bit to try and engage our students, engage our teachers, engage the wider community, and to do, because obviously they have a vested interest in it if we're not producing the human resources, which is great, but obviously there needs to be those kinds of controls and those policies around how does that work? How does it work in terms of our teachers signing up to a curriculum creating platform or a lesson creating platform and entering data? So where does that lie? Interestingly, we've just started speaking to some of our tech sector, and they're very interested in talking about the part of prompt engineering. So actually starting tomorrow, we're already having those meetings and those introductory sessions on prompt engineering that students can attend. So we're moving fast in terms of on the ground work, but the policy around it obviously needs to match that, which is a challenge.
Thank you, Mark and Stephen. UNU Macau has been engaged in a series of policy work with some member states related to AI, and some of the countries tend to go for a more elaborate approach. So they would like us to conduct more thorough research for them to understand the needs and the pros and cons, and after that we report back, and then also organize a capacity building, a training workshop for the government officials to inform the policy making. Some other countries, especially from Africa, they don't necessarily have the resources to do so. So what we have been discussing with one of the partners is that they tend to develop this template format. So you have this template, and every country can bring this template to customize it based on the cultural difference, based on the contextual differences. So different nations may have or member states may have different approaches. So I totally agree. Yeah, we'll be happy to continue to explore with you on this topic. It's quite interesting. So Lydia, from the European Union's perspective, what are some main considerations of regulating generative AI for education?
Well, let me mention just two recent regulation. Well, the recent one is AI Act, just from the last month. AI Act clearly prohibits biometric categorization, emotional recognition, AI system providing social scoring of natural persons in general. When we go to the part about the education and vocal training, AI Act mention determining access or admission for assigning person to educational vocational training institution or evaluating learning outcomes for assessing. These examples are put as a high-risk AI system. And let me just read from the AI Act. Such an AI system should be accompanied by appropriate information in the form of instructions of use about characteristic, capabilities, limitation of performance of the AI system, and so on. Another regulation which we have, which was in full force from February this year, is the Digital Service Act. I'll just mention aspects about the children in that DSA Act. So platforms must also put measures in place to mitigate risks from the children and intend and do whatever they can in best interest of the child. This is a human right from the UN. also forbidding dark patterns in advertising toward children, but also create safe environment for the children. So those two regulations are already in force, AI Act not in a full force. But besides the regulation, we also need supporting activities. For example, I am part of the expert group who wrote ethical guidelines of the use of AI and data in education. We also have several expert and work groups in European Digital Education Hub. Also, Council of Europe is working on that area. So, combination of regulation, ensuring our rights, and also giving support to the, in our example, to the whole education community.
Thank you, Lydia. Antonios, so this question is related to how generative AI affects our learning and teaching, the teaching of teaching and learning. Would you please address this question? And before that, I saw my colleagues has been posting something on the chat, so I would just like to give you a heads up. UNU, UN University is launching a UNU Global AI Network. So we have a different, focus groups and to discuss different topics, and it will be launched during our UNU AI conference on the 25th of April in Macau. So for those who are interested in joining, please just go on our website. And the members can be organizations, it can be national governments, ministries, it can be NGOs, it can be private sector. So far, we have already had 30 members from university, from governments, from individuals, and also from NGOs and the private sectors. So feel free to join us using the link in the chat. Back to you, Antonios.
Thank you for your efforts in this area. And back to the question, I would say that I have many considerations and concerns with regards to education, but I would pivot back to the start of the webinar and the words of the rector, who most wisely noted that students haven't developed the ability to discern. So my biggest concern is with that, their inability to discern and things going wrong. And what can go wrong? Well, one, they could be generating material that and then consuming it without knowing that it's inaccurate. They could be using it incorrectly. So, for example, not understanding the severity of plagiarism and handing something that's not really theirs in, right? So these are some of the concerns in that regard. But it keeps going. So I would point out that there's a gap, right? If you just look at ChatGPT 3.5 is free, but ChatGPT 4 has a subscription fee. And I know this probably might sound ludicrous to some, but even in New York City, there are some students who can't readily afford the higher level of the subscription, right? That cost. So they're at a disadvantage to their peers. So if we see these types of issues just in New York City, and then we were to step back and look at the globe, right? This problems most definitely has a more significant impact, right? And there are many considerations in that regard. That being said, we're just on our journey with respect to AI. I was looking through the guidelines, and it was they were highlighting the size of ChatGPT and how it's been growing. So I can only just speculate to its abilities once it reaches its next level, right, on its quest for superintelligence. So there are a lot of lots of thoughts, lots of concerns, lots of considerations that need to be taken. But at the end of the day, it's a very powerful tool that has made us more productive and can't really be discounted.
Thank you, Antonio. So there's pros and cons, there's opportunities, there's challenges, and we need regulations, we need policies, we also need AI competencies developments for not only for the students, but also for teachers, for policymakers, and for technology community. So that's what we're trying to do as UNU and also with UNESCO and with all of you actually. So the last question is actually for everybody. And what will be the future of learning? What would the future of learning look like with the generative AI? And whoever wants to start, that's fine. We can also invite Mr. Miao to address this question. What would the future of learning look like with the generative AI? Whoever is ready, please just go ahead.
For me, the future of learning would be where students are active creators and not passive acceptors of information. Generative AI gives that strong potential. Again, it has to be well managed. The frameworks need to be around it. But I think the opportunity for creation, albeit understanding that what is created needs to be protected, particularly as I think about, for example, examples that I am passionate about here in the Cayman Islands, like culture and heritage. There are things that I want our young people to be able to connect with, engage with, to understand from their history. But I also want them to be able to link it and tie it to what engages them now, what's important for them now, what they like now. So I think generative AI gives us that potential, but we understand that what is created there then becomes accessible and part of that broad knowledge base. So, creation with the understanding that protections need to be in place and frameworks need to be surrounding it.
Thank you, Mark.
I would.
Okay, go, Antonio.
I would kind of separate the future into two. So the near future and then the far future. And for the far future, we can kind of look to futurists as to how our world would be. But for the near future, I think that AI, at least with respect to computer science education and so on, has given students a very powerful ally, and one that helps them develop their ideas in a way like never before, right? It's like having an instructor with you 24/7 on call. Just a bit of care is needed. And
well, I'm usually the one who brings the dark part of the future of education. Knowing already about how digital gap will be wider with the AI, recognizing that small countries and small languages doesn't have a chance, seeing the percentages on Mr. Miao's slide saying that even Chinese languages is under 0.1%. What it means for Croatian language? Come on, we are not anywhere on the map. So also I already seen actions saying this is created by humans. So are we moving to the education where some schools will have a certified, here you will be taught by the humans, not by the AI. So I hope that our collaborative effort will steer us away from that dark version of the future of the education, at least while it is still upon us to do something.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to think about. some of the darker sides or the dangers of where we could go. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of positive from what I see, but yes, of course there are a lot of potentials that we need to work around and rally around to make sure that there is that adaptive policy work that goes around it, and for us to be really able to understand what the implications are. The future could look like every student gets their own personal teaching assistant, which is something that we've been working towards, getting much more teaching assistants in school, but we certainly can't mitigate the fact of that actual human part of the interaction with children, especially from a social and emotional well-being perspective of things, and understanding how important that is. But as to further afield, I mean, where it's arguable that we're in a post Moore's law era, so that has some significant implications, and we also have to learn about the implications of what that means for sustainability, and what it means for potential for climate change, especially as a very small and low-lying country that has very little relief at all. That's a significant implication for us and our students, and what does that mean for us? So the future is, I guess, unknown, but we do need to think about it very carefully.
Thank you all. Mr. Miao, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so the same question back to you. What would the future of learning look like with the generative AI?
I'm more on the side of Lydia, so I'm not so optimistic in terms of digital gap. At the same time, we should be very careful about the claim saying that AI and generative AI will release the workload of teacher. It will all very often turn out to be the opposite, because we have a tendency that we want to digitalize everything. Who are providing the digital data? Teachers. So they need to input blah 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 every day the data, and it's add a lot of workload to them. Secondly, the teaching learning cycle now is becoming, before it's two-way teacher student, maybe content kind of relations. Now it become teacher AI student triangular loop. So this gives a teacher a lot of new workload in terms of the pedagogical understanding, instructional design, learning design, scenario design. So it's not release teachers' workload. We will significantly add the burdens and workload to teachers. And so that's my second point. The last point is that at this moment, I think generative AI is very likely to be used for the high order thinking in career-based learning, but will demand a lot of teachers, not the instructional design, but the learning design and the scenario design. And the teacher also need to not only to design the scenario, but also to engineer the scenarios to happen as we expect. So it's not something that generative AI put into the classroom, high order thinking, inquiry-based learning, project-based learning will happen. No, never. It will never happen, because student does not have the motivation. They do not have the task. They do not have the open-ended project-based problem and the task. All this need to be designed by teachers. So I won't say that generative AI will transform teaching and learning pedagogies or methodology overnight. It will take a long time to go to the direction we want.
Thank you, Mr. Miao. I think I was able to catch up with some of the time that we lost. So the panel discussion, I know there are a lot of questions in the chat and in the Q&A, even though I would really like to address them, but because of the time restriction, we try to respect everybody's time, so we cannot address these questions, unfortunately. But you're invited to our AI conference in Macau, so feel free to come and continue our discussion on the topic and beyond. So now I'll give the floor back to Sophie to give the closing remarks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the panelists.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you really for the valuable insights, the diverse perspectives on both practice and on policy. I mean, we heard the need for a cautious approach, but the opportunities in terms of content creation for teachers, curriculum co-creation, opportunities for developing critical thinking skills, opportunities in research to generate ideas, to brainstorm and later to review. the implications in terms of teachers remaining central, not only the need for continuous professional development, but also the nature of that professional development, looking at teacher competencies that are no longer technical, but that are also looking into strengthening human agency, becoming aware of the ethical principles. In terms of policy, obviously the challenge, I mean, we have we have a time lag between the fast-paced development of these technologies and the ability of policy to adapt to these changing circumstances. We also heard about a capacity gap, and we had the examples of regulation from Europe around the AI Act, the Digital Services Act, but also the need to complement those with support activities. So really a very rich and diverse set of insights, and really wanted to thank you all for that. If I can add my word on the future of learning in AI, I would just add the S. There will be very diverse futures of learning driven by generative AI, and it's not beyond the question of the digital divide. It's also the very diverse contexts and capacities, and in particular, teacher capacities, when we know of the realities of teacher shortage and the shortage and even declining share of qualified teachers in some regions of the world. So futures of learning, very diverse futures, and this is where we need to work together in a collaborative way. The report of the International Commission on the Futures of Education was titled Reimagining Our Futures Together. It is this collective work and a collaborative work and this cooperation that we need if we want to mitigate the risks and seize the opportunities as we go forward. So really a big thank you to all of our panelists. That was really most insightful. Sincere thanks to Rector Marwala and ADG Stefania Giannini for giving a very comprehensive set of opening remarks that really sets the context. Thanks to my colleague Fen Chung for the presentation on the guidance on generative AI in education and research. And finally, thank you also to Jingho Wang for having invited us into this and for having moderated the session. A last word to say, keep on your radar the 2nd to the 5th of September, 2024, Paris, UNESCO, Digital Learning Week. We will be releasing the frameworks for AI competencies for teachers and students, among other things, but please keep those dates in mind. 2 to the 5th of September in Paris at UNESCO headquarters, Digital Learning Week. Thank you all, and very much appreciated this first joint seminar, and I hope it will be the first in a series. Thank you all.
Sure, looking forward to the next collaboration, and we'll have a more generative AI webinar series, so stay tuned. Get on our website and you can subscribe. Next one, if I remember correctly, will be generative AI and the diplomacy. So if you're interested, you can subscribe. Thank you, UNESCO colleagues. Thank you, panelists, and looking forward to working with you again.